We tend to focus on the peak of a psychedelic experience, the hours of intense, swirling hallucinations. But clinicians often find the most significant progress happens weeks later, during the quiet, sober work of integration. Modern neuroscience is investigating the possibility that these dramatic visions are actually secondary to a much more subtle physical event happening deep within the brain circuitry. Children absorb a language or a social cue with a fluid ease that seems to vanish as we age. Biologists call these periods of effortless learning critical periods, brief windows when the brain is uniquely willing to be shaped by the world around it. Once we reach adulthood, these windows seem to shut for good, leaving us with a brain that is far more stable, but also far resistant to change. To understand how we get stuck, we have to look at the physical deadline that ends our childhood flexibility. Our learning windows do not close because our neurons stop working. They close because our brains begin to prioritize stability over growth. As we mature, neural circuits are encased in dense lattices called perineuronal nets. These structures act like a molecular cast, physically stabilizing the wiring. This fixity serves a purpose, ensuring basic systems don't require renegotiating every single day. However, this biological armor is a double-edged sword. The structures that keep our brains functional also tend to preserve our traumas and destructive habits, making recovery increasingly difficult once the developmental window has passed. For decades, the closing of these windows was considered a permanent biological fact. But in 2019, a lab at Johns Hopkins decided to test this boundary by administering MDMA to fully grown adult mice. The researchers watched as a single dose appeared to dissolve the perineuronal nets, temporarily stripping away the physical scaffolding that kept the adult brain fixed in place. This dissolution successfully returned the mice to a state of adolescent-like plasticity, specifically reopening the long-closed window for social reward learning. Suddenly, adult animals were able to form social connections and learn trust with the same ease they possessed during their youth. Reopening a critical period in an adult brain was a massive discovery, but it raised an even larger question. Was this an isolated effect of MDMA or a hidden property shared across different psychedelic compounds? In 2023, the same lab expanded their research to include LSD, psilocybin, and ketamine, and even ibogaine. Despite their wildly different chemical structures, every one of these substances triggered the same reopening. These distinct drugs act on completely different receptors, yet they all eventually converge on the same downstream event, the remodeling of the perineuronal nets that hold the brain's learning windows shut. The data revealed something remarkable about timing. The open window's duration scales directly with the length of the drug's acute effects. After ketamine, the window stays ajar for 48 hours. But after ibogaine, the brain remains highly plastic for up to 4 weeks. This suggests the trip serves as a biological timer, defining exactly how long the brain's physical scaffolding will remain softened before it hardens once more. We often call it an afterglow, but this research suggests we're feeling a brain that has temporarily shed its molecular armor and returned to a state of youthful malleability. This physical reality provides a concrete mechanism for the clinical practice of integration. It suggests that the real progress happens while the window is still open. The deliberate work of therapy and behavioral change during this post-trip window allows a person to write new code into a vulnerable brain, forming connections that will eventually be locked in place as the nets reform. However, the mouse data offers a necessary warning. An open window is neutral. A brain made temporarily plastic is more susceptible to healing, but it is also more vulnerable to negative inputs and environmental harm. The hours of altered consciousness provide the opportunity, but the weeks of integration produce the actual change. The medicine lives in the architecture we build while the mind is still willing to move.